Welcome to Monday, and like the good old days, Kevin Graham, I'm joined by yourself, the man who joined me 5 years ago at the kitchen table for episode 1 of A Celtic State of Mind. We're still here. We're now going out live every weekday. It's a pre-season. How's your weekend been? A lot of people have been celebrating, but I think you and I celebrated in a slightly different way over the weekend.
Weekend was fine. On Friday night, I went to see McKed. Well, that's why the T-shirt is on just now. Obviously, it was a fantastic session with Mick up on the channel at this precise moment in time where we travelled to Liverpool to meet him. And it was great. It was utterly fantastic. He released his new album, Dear Scott, on Friday. So Glasgow was virtually the launch night for it. He played 11 out of the 12 songs on it, and quite a few Shaq, Mick Head classics as well. Great crowd in St Luke's, absolutely fantastic crowd in St Luke's. That was a great night, brilliant night. Then Saturday we went to Kinghorn Beach for a family day. So that was good. And yesterday we had the paddling pool.
Nice. Well, the reason we bring it up, Kev, is because 5 years ago, when you and I had this discussion, both big fans, I think, back then of the Anfield rap and what they had done for the Liverpool fan-based media community, and we discussed, doing something around Celtic that would bring in a bit of the culture that you see or seen on the terraces, you now see in the stands, and you hear there's a like-mindedness about a lot of Celtic fans, be that political, musical, artistically, fashion-based, and of course your heritage. And we wanted to bring that in to a show where we could speak to like-minded people. So we used to, once a week, interview somebody, and it was their Celtic State of Mind, their story. And the people we interviewed were the likes of, I was going to say magicians. Have we had a magician? Not yet. Musicians, actors. Although there is a magician coming up at one of our events that you're appearing at. Yes. The Magic Mod will be comparing. The reason that we're starting off on a tangent, ladies and gents, is we appreciate that you're here to talk about Celtic, and we will talk about Celtic. But see, from time to time, it's all right to have a wee bit of chat about the music, a wee bit of chat about fashion, even us guys in their 40s. Some people might have a wee guffaw at that. And everything else that we're interested in. And we always bring it back to the Celtic story. So, Kevin's wearing a Michael Head Strands t-shirt. On the first day I ever met you, you were wearing a Michael Head t-shirt, and our friendship blossomed, would you say, since then? And we're still here 5 years later, talking about Celtic. And there is loads to talk about. The strapline today, I feel, is a very important one. Why Celtic should tie Ange down on a long-term deal. And I know a lot of people in the comment section are going to be saying, listen, Ange just said he wants to be here for the duration. He thinks he's here forever. These are Ange quotes. And I'm just not, it's not that I'm not buying Ange, I'm just not buying that situation, Kev. It's not, for me, concrete enough when you've got someone who at this moment in time is probably he's hottest in terms of his stock as a manager than he's ever been. And I was talking to someone just a couple of weeks ago who's got a really good insight into English football and Manchester United in particular, and he's talking about the fact that Ange Postecoglou's name has started to circulate around English clubs when they're looking for a new manager. This concerns me a wee bit. I read an article over the weekend, it might even have been this morning, from Chris Sutton, who has the same concerns, Kev. Where are you with the Ange Postecoglou scenario at the moment? Ange says he's happy. I trust that he is. But see, in this modern game of football, anything can happen.
I'm not worried one little bit. I think Ange is making all the right noises, that he wants to hang around. I don't think he actually sees it as a completed project. I know that he left the Australian job before it was finished, but that was on I think that was on a matter of principle. He had fell out with the directors above him, and I can't see our directors annoying him this summer. Hopefully,
I like your optimism.
The directors annoying him this summer. I think if he has a fantastic season this season, maybe a couple of noticeable results in Europe, then we might be at the worrying stage at this point next year. But I don't think that any English club would take a gamble on him at this precise moment in time, just because the snobbery that we saw at this point last year when he was appointed, really where he's came from. And they'll also have a look at other managers that have came down from Scotland. I mean, you've got Brendan Rodgers, who has ended up at Leicester. I reckon he's done a fantastic job at Leicester, but some of the Leicester fans are thinking it's time for him to go. And you have a look at, like it or lump it, you've got to have a look at Gerrard as well, what he's doing at Aston Villa. And I mean, I'm not worried about Postecoglou going. I'm not worried about like the 1 year rolling contract. Right, Martin O'Neill had the 1 year rolling contract, and every single summer we had this fear that Martin O'Neill was going to leave. But Martin O'Neill was the third best manager in Britain at that point, behind Arsene Wenger and Alex Ferguson. So he had already done his job in England. No, I'm not worried at all. I'm happy with the 1 year rolling contract. I think Postecoglou's happy with the 1 year rolling contract. If we do well next year, maybe at this point next season, I'll be worried. But in my head, managers have got a 3 year cycle anyway. So it's next year's probably.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that.
Next year's probably very, very, very rarely do you get a manager that'll last longer than 3 years anyway.
What we got, Kev, but 19 permanent managers in the history of the club. It's there or thereabouts, isn't it? And I know that, you know, at the beginning there were long tenures. You know, when you look at Willie Maley and you look at obviously once we get into Jimmy McGrory McStay was he wasn't quite an interim, but you know, the war years, and you've got Jimmy McGrory coming in, spent 25 years I think as a manager, then Jock Stein 13 years. And then it starts to whittle down to the modern day, like you say, that cycle seems to be about 3 years. My main concern isn't about Ange. It's about the club. It's about the people behind the scenes at the club, and that could well change, you know, and then the dynamic can change. And we've seen that happening. And I'm not a pessimistic individual. I'm looking towards the Champions League next season. I'm looking towards the build of the squad, the continuation of the build that Ange has already started. But there is a niggle. I'd much rather he was on a long term. And does that not kind of like safeguard us when it comes to compensation if that was to happen, Kev?
I don't know if it's safe. I'm not a contract expert and I'm not a contract lawyer, but I think what it is Ange Postecoglou woke up the day with a contract which has got a year to run. He wakes up tomorrow with a contract with a year to run. You look at Brendan Rodgers, basically we gave him a 4 year deal and he walked out 18 months after signing it. So does it really matter? Contracts are there to be broken as long as somebody's willing to pay the compensation. I'm sure Ange Postecoglou's compensation is probably fixed. That's something that the board might look at. The board might look at giving him a better deal, but still on a 1 year rolling contract and upping the compensation as they see fit. But as I say, I'm not worried at this precise moment in time. I think it's decent that there's English clubs having a look at Postecoglou. It shows that we're doing things right.
And the thing is, obviously, we'll find out, Kev, before, because Big Rambo will tell us, if it is to happen.
He will tell us, he will tell us.
And we will tell you.
I mean, Postecoglou as well, I mean, he has got the links to the City Group. And there could be more and more people now having a look at this, the network of the City Group, and going, they've got a certain style of coach, a bit like the Red Bull Group. They go, well, if we're looking for a certain style of coach, if we're looking for a philosophy, looking for a certain type of football, then go to the Red Bull Group or go to the City Group, because these guys only appoint top coaches and managers to make their empire function. But I shouldn't have used the empire there, but I couldn't think of a better word.
On this weekend of all weekends, yes, there is a stable there, and you can see a certain style and philosophy that comes out of that particular stable, Kev. So I totally get that. With every success, I think it's just building on the reputation of the group as a whole. I want to get as many people's comments in as possible, get the interaction going. Big shout out actually to you and Boy Martin, who has appeared on the show quite a few times now in person. Well done to you and your family over the last week, and I'm hoping that you're enjoying it and basking in the glory of it. I was basking in the sunshine in Nottingham on Friday, Kev. We went down to a festival. That's why yourself, Colin Watt, and also Alan Morrison were. By the way, I was very impressed with Colin's graphics
it was brilliant,
on Friday. You know?
It was really, really good. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I did really, really enjoy it. It was it gave us a completely different dimension. Great having Alan on as well, because Alan gives you the straight down the line answer, where I'm just a bubbling fool who just goes with, he'll be great, he'll no be great, and I'm on the Gucci bus now.
Are you? Well, that's an interesting one, because he is a player that I'm sure will be part of discussions throughout the pre-season. We're going to go to Gerald Coyle first of all, who wishes us all a good afternoon. Absolutely, yeah, and same to yourself, Gerald. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. We've got Strangelove the Doctor, a regular contributor. I'm not happy with the rolling contract for Ange, but I do understand it. Remember, the boss took his nation to a World Cup, then walked on general principle. It keeps the board on their toes. It does, and that's, I guess, what concerns me a wee bit, because, I mean, our board has been known to fall out with managers who are doing well in the past. Urban Culture, I reckon he will take us a long way in Europe in 2 years, and will possibly go then. I don't see him going before, unless it's a lack of ambition by the board. That can also be an issue. See the thing, Kev, I was on last week with Brian Degnan, and he made a decent point. This will come into some of the talk about the departures this summer as well, and the point was all about having that continuity, and that was why we were looking, and we've spoken so many times over the last year about this structure within the club, so that even if and when it does happen, and I'm not wishing my life away here, but when a manager leaves, Kev, you've still got the continuity, the structure remains the same, and I don't think we've got that yet. So over the, let's say, the 9 in a row period, when you went from Lennon to Dyler to Rodgers to Lennon, and every time the manager comes in, the style changes, the backroom team changes, the philosophy changes, and the players obviously change as well. And I think we've seen a wee bit of this, and we will be talking about departures, incomings, etc., with just the swathe of players that are leaving the building, Kev, because they were never part of Ange's plans in the first place. So he's come in with his own ideas. These guys maybe fit somebody else's model when they signed for Celtic 3 or 4 years ago, and that manager's now gone. And I do see Ange as that type of guy I would like to see sticking around, even when he's not the manager at the moment. You know, that's how I see him. He's got that vision.
He has got that vision, but he also seems to be like a coach. He also seems to be like a guy who likes to be on the training ground, and he likes to be in the fire. Well, I don't think a director of football suits him at this precise moment in time. I like what he's doing. I mean, the rebuild is just not what we're actually seeing on the pitch. There is stuff happening behind the scenes with Anton Markelholm, and I think they're now advertising for a first team analysis as well, and the sports science. And I mean, what you've got to remember is Postecoglou's come from Australia, which is very big on sports science. Because of the swimming and stuff like that. And I'm sure when Ange Postecoglou probably turned up at Celtic, he probably couldn't believe that we didn't have a sports scientist. Because I'm sure the club he came from probably had a number of sports scientists to deal with the players, and like a number of other health aspects that to deal with the players. We were just behind, and that was mainly because Brendan Rodgers took everybody. That he had brought in, and the club have to ensure that doesn't happen again. But for what I've seen for Postecoglou and what we've learned of Postecoglou is he will not do that, because he hasn't done it. He's never went to Yokohama and took all his backroom staff. He never went to, when he left Melbourne to go to Yokohama, he never done that. And he hasn't done it with Celtic. So you've got to say that he doesn't seem that type of guy, that he likes going in there to try and work with the people that are already there, and if he feels that they need replaced, then he replaces them. And obviously the backroom staff that he's got there just now are ticking all the boxes at this precise moment in time. And he's bringing in, you've got Mark Wall that's coming in as well. I don't know when he actually starts. That hasn't been communicated very well either, since that 8:15 sneak out of an announcement on a bank holiday Monday. So, I mean, we need to get the structure. Brian's spot on. We need to get the structure of the club right. And the structure must continue after Postecoglou leaves. But at the moment, we're in the middle of a Postecoglou storm, and I still reckon we've got at least 2 years left of him yet.
I hope so. I hope you're absolutely right. We're going to be looking at some of the departures, which I think proves yet again that if Ange Postecoglou wants you at the club, you're there. You're not there just because of habit. You're not there because the people upstairs like you. You're there because Ange wants you there, Kev. And I think that's important, because a big topic of discussion in Neil Lennon's final season was around the backroom team of John Kennedy, Gavin Strachan. If Ange didn't rate them, they'd have been gone by now. And I do seriously get that vibe from Ange Postecoglou. And I think when you're looking at some of the players that are leaving the club, set to leave the club, already gone, it's quite clear that if you don't fit his vision or his standard, then you will be out the building. Now, Strangelove the Doctor again. Lennon was scapegoated, as was Dyla and Rodgers, in regards to recruitment. I dare say Ange has spoken to all of them and has an eye on the board. I don't see him failing for any old tricks like the others. Let's hope that things have turned a corner in terms of the recruitment.
You can break down the three of them. Neil Lennon possibly got the job when he shouldn't have got it. He was only candidate after Mowbray left.
Yeah.
First job in football.
Yep.
Didn't have the management experience to back up managing a club the size of Celtic. Yes, club legend, still a club legend. No argument with that. But you can maybe say that he, somewhere in the back of the mind, maybe he will not admit this, maybe had a wee debt to Peter Law. And went along with certain things because he knew that he was maybe lucky to have the job in the first place.
His stock wasn't as high.
His stock wasn't as high.
Yep.
Second time round as well, he apart from those 6 months, everybody's been quite clear that he probably shouldn't have got it long term because the club had moved on at that point. Dyla as well wasn't a big enough personality to actually handle the stuff that was happening behind him. And there was a lot of stuff fired on Dyla. But even though Dyla laid the foundations with the signings, or whoever made these signings for Brendan Rodgers to come in to give us an invincible treble team, and Brendan Rodgers walked because he had an ego to handle the folk behind him. Mm-hmm. And that was a class of egos. So it's going to be interesting to see where Postecoglou is with this. But evidence so far, and you can only base this on the January window, is what Postecoglou wants, Postecoglou gets.
And dare I say, if he doesn't get it, then it causes an issue with the CEO. Because, again, it's one of these things, Kev, that's almost been airbrushed out of last season because of the success. Something you spoke about time and time again during the 9 in a row era. Whilst there's success, it masks a lot of the deficiencies behind the scenes. And obviously the departure of Don Mackay after 74 days, I think it was, 72, 74 days, has almost been forgotten about because we had a successful season. But why did that happen? Is that because Ange wasn't getting what he wanted? Could we have had a couple more players that we ended up getting in January earlier had the likes of Don Mackay been working quicker? Because Ange Postecoglou moaned about that, didn't he? He brought it up. The deals weren't getting done quickly enough.
He did actually moan about that, but then there's two trains of thought about that. Was it the fact that Don Mackay didn't come from a football background that meant that he didn't really understand how the
deals
actually worked? Was it that he did understand how those deals worked, and there was other members of the board didn't want to understand how those deals worked? They didn't understand that what the manager wants is what the manager gets. And in a roundabout way, did the fact that Don Mackay was binned after 73 days strengthen Ange's hand? And because the CEO, who was the acting CEO at that point, who is now the full-time CEO, was he sitting there going, I can't make a mess of this because we've made a mess in the summer, so we need to actually sort this out going forward. So there could have just been a wee bit of smoke and mirrors. They go, I will give the manager what he wants. We'll see what happens in the summer, and we might be back to operating as usual. Because what we've got to remember, there's only been one change in that back from the last decade, and that's Michael Nicholson as CEO. Everybody else is still sitting there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. So the culture there,
The culture's still there.
maybe the exact same as it always was. Gerard Coyle, let's not wish our lives away. Live in the Ange moment. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I'm just a realist when it comes to Celtic and board matters, Kev, because we have seen this movie before. Dave Trance, it's not why should Ange get signed to a long-term deal. It's an absolute must. Some people disagree with that because do contracts mean anything nowadays, says Dave. Gerard Coyle comes back, and Ange mentioned in a recent interview that he is happy with the rolling contract and that it keeps him on his toes if he doesn't have the security of a long-term contract, which is interesting as well. So I'm sure that this is a discussion we will continue to have. Let's have a wee look.
It's another discussion that we're going to have, Paul. We're going into the Champions League. And I'll guarantee you, and you've already seen it in comments and stuff like that, if we have a couple of dodgy results in the Champions League, you will have folks shouting that he's no good enough and he's got to change his style and yada, yada, this and that. Then you'll get folk who go, why did we give him a contract after a year when he never proved nothing? So there's an opposite argument, like, that folk would come out with that. And you see it happening already. Folk are going, you need to be more pragmatic in Europe. Well, he's not going to be pragmatic. And I'll guarantee you, after the first defeat that we'll get in Europe this season, there will be shouts that he's never going to be good enough. We can see it coming.
We will be somehow covering the games. Not quite sure what that format will take, Kev, but we will be covering the games either in here or closer to the stadium, so that maybe I can get to some more games next season than I did last year. Lanky67, I liked Ronnie. Shame he didn't get more time to settle. And Paradise63 comes in. Ronnie wasn't good enough. Simple. Well, we've all got our view on Ronnie Deila, and indeed on every Celtic manager who's had the job, Kev. My take on Ronnie, obviously with the benefit of looking back now and what has happened after he's left, is his legacy is in the players that he developed. I feel that when you look at the players who have gone on to bigger and better things, they are of a certain age group whereby he was able to almost mould them into his way of thinking. Players like Kieran Tierney, Callum McGregor, of course, he gave him his debut. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he also gave Tony Ralston his debut as a 17-year-old. And there are others. I mean, the Chris Ayer development, the Ryan Christie development, he brought him in, or he was certainly the manager when he came in. He went on to develop under Brendan Rodgers. But the legacy for me of Ronnie Deila is the players that he developed, the ones that he introduced to the first team squad. And you look back on them, well, one of them's now our captain in Callum McGregor. One of the biggest reasons we won the league last year was Callum McGregor. You look at what the likes of Tierney and Ayer, etc. have gone on to achieve. I think that he had a bigger issue with the senior pros. So you had the kind of younger players that bought into Ronnie and what he was trying to do. And then the senior pros, and it's the likes of, you know, Chris Commons and even Scott Brown to a degree. You remember the Kebab Gate with Scott Brown, captain of the club, and Charlie Mulgrew as well. So I think you can split it into that. He was up against it from day one, I believe, because he was never the first choice manager, and he was thrust into this scenario where perhaps he was more interested in coaching and developing players, yet he was obviously the focal point. He was given John Collins as a number 2, not his decision, but he went with it, going back to the point you made earlier, because it was the biggest gig he was ever going to get, so he's obviously going to do as he's told to a degree. And often felt that Collins should have taken a lot of the kind of managerial media role from Ronnie, but perhaps Ronnie Deila wanted to do that. I don't know. I think that he was a successful manager at Celtic. He won 2 of the 9, and I also think he'll go on to perhaps be the national manager in the future of Norway. I honestly do think that. You also look, I remember last season Norway were playing, Chris Ayer was in the squad, and I counted something like 7 or 8 players in that squad who had been given their senior debuts by Ronnie Deila. Which was, Martin Odegaard was the famous one, of course. The fifth, I think he was 15 when he was given his debut. But yeah, that's the Ronnie for me that I tend to think back on and remember. One player he had who likes to make his mouth go a bit is John Guidetti, Kev. Talking down his time at Celtic, talking down Scottish football. He's gone on to achieve virtually zip since he left Celtic. So
Guidetti is one that's he should look back on his time in Celtic with an absolute regret and go, why did I not stay there?
Should have been a springboard.
He would have been a superstar with us. He would have scored loads of goals for us. He had that personality which would have made him a cult hero with us quite easily. And we are the biggest club that he's ever played for. And I'm talking about fan base history wise. We are bigger than Man City. We are going to be the biggest club that John Guidetti's ever played for. And that should haunt him. That should haunt his waking hours.
But often, as you'll find, the people with that sizable ego will never ever come to terms with the realities of what you've just said there, Kev. We all know people like that. I'm going to run through some players that have gone or are on their way out. I'm going to start off with Osaze Urugire, whose move to Ostend at the moment seems to be on hold due to the transfer fee being too expensive, or his wages being too expensive. But I'm going to link that into Liam Scales and the proposed move to Aberdeen. And I'm asking myself, I'm asking you as well, Kev, they're two players. I think Urugide, the deal had already been lined up before Postecoglou came into Celtic, so you can't really argue and say that was a Postecoglou signing. But Scales, there's always been a question mark around the Scales deal. He was given games. He got about 13 appearances last season. Where did it go wrong for Liam Scales for you?
I don't think it's went wrong. I just think you look at the rebuild that we had last summer. It's quite clear that there were certain players already lined up to come in, and this is not a slight on Postecoglou, as I've sort of slighted other managers saying they accepted certain things happening. We had to bring in a whole load of players. And it was extremely difficult for a manager to come in and not have anything in place whatsoever and try to bring in 12 guys that are all his own guys. So there was boys already earmarked to come in. I think James McCarthy was already earmarked to come in. I think Liam Scales was already earmarked to come in. The two Sheffield Wednesday boys were already earmarked to come in. And they came. Liam Shaw, I think, was announced towards the end of the season or something like that. I don't think it's went wrong for Scales. I really don't. I just think it's been maybe a step up from Shamrock Rovers for where he's came from. I think the guy in front of him, Greg Taylor, has made the jersey his absolute own. And it could be good for Liam Scales to actually go to Aberdeen. And I think I did say that he should probably go out on loan in Collins thing on Friday. And Aberdeen seems a good fit if Aberdeen want him. Jim Goodwin, again, Irish background, knows the Irish setup quite well. Liam Scales to go out on loan. I don't reckon Urugide will ever kick a ball for Celtic. I think he'll leave this summer. I think that will go down as one of those bizarre transfers that just he joined the club, change of managers, just not going to work. The managers had a look at him as well and went, well, he didn't really suit the attributes that I want from a centre half. Go away and make a decent career for yourself, lad. Same with Liam Shaw. Never really stood out in that Motherwell side either. I can't see a really future. It's based on what we've seen, based on what we've actually seen, and based on the history that how he arrived at the club. The fact that he didn't really get a game with Motherwell. I know that he got injured in that. The fact that we allowed to, the only game that appeared him was the Real Betis game as well. I can't see Liam Shaw having a future at the club either. As you say, if Postecoglou fancies you, you're going to be hanging about. I can't see the two guys hanging about. And Liam Scales, I can see him going on loan to Aberdeen.
I think the chat is it could well be a permanent, and I don't know how Aberdeen would structure that deal, because I know that there's a couple of their players, one of whom will be spoken about in a wee second, who are getting attention from elsewhere. It will bring in a few quid, but there's no way Celtic will make their money back. I mean, Aberdeen aren't going to sign Liam Scales for £500,000, I don't think. Mark Mack, 1967, don't forget Dyla got Griffiths fit and scoring goals. Listen, that is spot on. I think Griffiths used to get weighed every single day by Ronnie Dyla, didn't he? Every day at training. And I would reckon that was his peak of his powers. Yeah, people going about his 2 goals against England, and that was under Brendan Rodgers. But he wasn't playing regularly under Brendan Rodgers. He played regularly under Ronnie Dyla, and he scored, was it the 40 goals in a season?
The season before his 2 goals against England, it would have been. The season before that. So he was still basically on the fumes of that season, that 40-goal season, when he scored the 2 goals against England.
You were at that game, weren't you?
Yes, that was the day we recorded the first podcast. I was going to that Scotland-England game.
All ties in. You were wearing shorts, as were most of the guys at the festival on Friday. I wasn't, of course, because I'm no most of the guys. Kevin, I'm not 20 or 23 or 24.
Nothing wrong with shorts.
It depends how the pins look. It depends on what's hanging from them, Kev. Martin O'Neill, Ronnie laid foundations for Rodgers' team. I think Kev was saying that. Yeah, big credit to the work that Ronnie Dyla did prior to Rodgers coming in. And there was another point I wanted to bring up here. Johnny Ryan cannot understand why Scales cannot be coached to play left centre-back. Scales himself reckons that's his strongest position. He did say that when he signed for the club. It was in the press conference we were at, in actual fact. Now, I'm interested to report, and this is obviously already out there, many players released. Kev, Kerr McInroy, Luke O'Connell, Ryan Mullen, Ross Doohan, Jonathan Afolabi, Barry Coffey, Karamoko Dembele, Brodie Patterson, and of course Ewan Henderson completed his move to Hibs. That's another 9 players out the door. When you look at that, a couple of questions for you. First of all, what's your biggest disappointment from that lot?
Has to be Dembele, eh? It does have to be Dembele, eh? You remember him getting on the bench at the cup final?
Yeah.
The treble cup final. It's quite hard to remember what cup finals and what trebles you're actually talking about.
I always differentiate.
We're that spoiled.
Well, the way I differentiate them, Kev, is I remember the Invincible one because of that picture with Kevin Miles jumping on the Celtic players. So, right, that's the first one. I remember the second one because of you and me being in the prawn sandwich brigade, because it's the only way I could get a ticket, and Marvin Compere getting selfies with everybody. I remember that. So that was the second one. Motherwell, right? The third one, Hearts. Eddie scores the 2 goals, and Dembele, as you say, was on the bench. How do I remember that? I sat next to a guy who was at Lisbon. I sat next to an old gentleman who was at Lisbon at that game, and I'll never forget that because he was in tears when we clinched the treble. And of course, the quadruple treble, I'll always associate that with lockdown and being in the studio with Lawrence. And strangely, Connor Hazard, it always comes to my mind as well. So that's how I, in my own mind, try and file them away. I don't take them for granted, but as you say, there was 4 trebles on the row, and sometimes they all bleed into a period of dominance, of course. And that's how I do it. And I always think back to that Marvin Compere moment. But yeah, he was on the bench. I remember it before that game, actually. Why I was down near the front, I can't remember. I think I was meeting somebody down the front. And Tierney, remember he was injured for the game.
Yes.
He came up to the fans who were down the front of the stand, and he was talking to them, talking about how disappointed he was to miss out. But again, that's something that seems to have followed him, Kev. You know, in his career, that injury issue that he seems to have. He doesn't play enough games now, does he?
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't play enough games, and I don't think it'll stop him getting a big move. I don't think it is going to stop him getting a massive move, which Celtic will benefit from. And I do know that there was rumours that there was clubs sniffing about, and I still think those same clubs are still looking for a left back. And if you were looking for a left back and you were one of the top 4 clubs in England, maybe the champions of England, looking for a left back, I think there's only one place you're actually going to look, and that is Highbury, and it is for Kieran Tierney.
Actually, there we are. Are you back, Kev?
I'm
certainly
back, aye.
back. Good man. I disappeared for a minute there. I think it was the Gremlins back in the works, but we're back. Sorry, I interrupted you there talking about Tierney leaving for £75 million to somewhere like Real Madrid.
Aye, I don't know if Real Madrid's going to be the place. I don't know if anybody else heard it, but I think he'll actually end up at Man City.
Right. Remember the conversation we had, though? Way back. There'll be a previous episode on the YouTube channel where we spoke about when Tierney left for Arsenal, and the discussion was around, can he take another step up? We had that chat. And we were talking about, I mean, I think it's maybe lazy or generic. We were talking about maybe moving to a Barcelona or a Real Madrid at that point, later down the line. And it does seem to happen, but that Barcelona Real Madrid is now Man City because they've got the cash, of course. So can you see that happening? What kind of fee are they talking? Is it 75 million quid? Is that what they're talking?
I think it's between 50 and 70, what they're actually talking. I mean, it's just silly money, absolutely silly money, but that's what they pay down there. I think Man City, because Man City do need a left-sided defender. The boy Walker is getting on in years. Tierney's proved he can play on the left-hand side of a back three. He also proves he can slip into the midfield the way Guardiola wants to play as well. I think he's a perfect fit for Man City. Truthfully, I do think that he is.
And when you look at the players who move on from Celtic, there's quite a few actually where we have the sell-on clause. So we get a percentage of that. And, Tierney being one of them. The other one... Dembele's been in the news, but we can confirm that he's not going to Turkey. Mr. Dembele is not going to Turkey. That's just nonsense talk. Although he may obviously move this summer, it won't be to Turkey. So there you go. Is that an exclusive, Kev? Are we allowed to reveal that? We just did. A few other things from the players who were released. Jonathan Afolabi's had quite a few loan deals out of the club. It's obviously not going to work for him, so you let him go on and hopefully he can carve out a career elsewhere. Kerr McInroy, McInnes is a fan apparently, so he's trying to sign on for Kilmarnock. Luke O'Connell, disappointing end to his Celtic career as well.
Again, it's just one of these punts that we seem to take on guys that play under 30, 40 games for first-team clubs in the lower reaches of England, and we take a punt on them and it just doesn't work out because there's no clear pathway from youth under 18s to the first team. Mm-hmm. There isn't a clear pathway unless you're a generational talent or you're willing to hang about, or you're willing to have somebody like Ronnie, or you're willing to wait on somebody like Ronnie Dyler to give you a chance, like he done with Callum McGregor, like he done with a number of young guys. I mean, when you look at, we're talking about Karamoko Dembele, and he was spoke about for 13 since he's a generational talent. And I'm maybe going to say something here that folk will probably slaughter me for, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I don't think it's daft. If Dyler or Rodgers were still the manager of the club, Karamoko Dembele would have been a first-team regular by now.
Right. Well, I don't think it sounds daft because I've previously said, Kevin, again, and make him across as though it's a dig at Neil Lennon. I feel that Dembele's development was absolutely prevented under Neil Lennon. Now, last season it was down to injury, we know that. It was a terrible injury. Ankle, that's just unlucky, I think. And had he not been injured, Postecoglou may well have saved Dembele's Celtic career. But it shouldn't have to have been saved at that point, Kev. It had stagnated for an entire season, at least, and longer, under Lenny. And I do think that this is one of the downsides of that. Dembele doesn't... None of these guys become bad players, but what happens is their development can be stumped if they're not playing, competitive football. Dembele's not played anywhere near the amount of competitive football that he needs to be playing as a 19-year-old. When you look at some of these other guys, Barry Coffey went over to Ireland, performed brilliantly. He'll get a move over there permanently, I'm pretty sure. Ross Doohan, he's played over 100 games out at clubs like, most recently, Tranmere Rovers. So these guys will get clubs and they will have careers, but their development of guys like Dembele may have been stumped due to the lack of game time. The Luke O'Connell point I would make is obviously he done pretty well for Queen's Park in the fourth tier and the third tier of Scottish football. But can he make the step up to the second tier? Word has it that he doesn't have the pace to make that step up, Kev. So you wonder what the future holds for Luke O'Connell. The other point I would make is two of those guys are goalkeepers, right? So you've got Ross Doohan, you've got Ryan Mullen, goalies. We've also heard reports this week that Barkas were going to tear up his contract, get rid of him, and basically take the hit on a £5 million flop. Do we need another goalie? If you lose 3 in one pre-season, you need backup, surely.
Do we need another goalkeeper? Right, Scott Bain's got a new contract, and we fancy Toby Alowemi. I think that's how you say it. We see him as a long-term first-team goalkeeper. If you believe certain rumours and certain articles that are written by The Athletic, so I don't know. I mean, it's quite difficult. I was impressed with the goalkeeper at the Let Go the couple of times I watched him in the Colts.
Mullen.
I was impressed with him, Mm-hmm. But as you say, Doohan's now played over 100 games for senior games for clubs that are not Celtic. So he's not coming back to sit as a third choice goal. He's not coming back to sit as a third choice goalie. Are you going to bring a goal? Are you bringing in a goalkeeper? Like, it goes back to the pathway, doesn't it? It does go back to the pathway. If you fully believe that Toby Alowemi is your first team goalkeeper in the next couple of years when Joe Hart's contract up, you do not put anybody in front of him. You really don't put anybody in front of him. And you get him involved in the first team as quick as you possibly can. And maybe that means we're going to have a lot of games. Maybe that means you give him like League Cup games. That seems to be the handle that teams do. They give goalkeepers cup games and all of that. But no, I wouldn't sign another goalkeeper for the first team squad. No, I think those three are enough.
So we were too top heavy as it was in your view. We've also got Conor Hazard. I mean, he's been out in loan, but he's due to come back. So no new goalie for Kev Graham. That's an interesting reasoning as well. If you want Toby Owolemi to progress.
If you want Owolemi to progress, yes. But this is a massive, massive but. If you get an upgrade on Joe Hart, who suits Postecoglou's style of play better than what Joe Hart does, then you may look at it. But those goalkeepers cost millions and millions of pounds. And we've got other places where we can actually strengthen the team. Mm-hmm. And you can have arguments every day under the sun that you should be looking for an upgrade on Joe Hart, i.e. his distribution to the ball. But Joe Hart brings us other stuff in absolute spades, which is leadership, shot stopping and stuff like that. And I don't think we'll be looking at another goalkeeper. But there is an argument out there for all these football managers, championship managers, all these hipster coaches and all of that who will be going, you need to upgrade Joe Hart to be able to play the ball out for the back the way that Postecoglou wants it. But they cost money.
No, we'll see, because you're right. They would cost a huge amount of money, and maybe he's trying to mould that goalkeeper in Toby coming through the ranks. Lanky67, I can see Musa going to the English Premier, a team like Newcastle or Everton. I always felt that Dembele and Edouard would have made a great partnership. You know, we got fleeting glances of that.
We got teased that pre-season of the 3-5-2,
We did. You're talking about players coming in. I'm going to have a quick rundown of the names who have been linked this week. Now, this is going to change every time we do this, Kev, but let's have a run through anyway. Ben Davies, Liverpool, left-back, centre-half, 26 years of age. Stick or twist on him, Kev? We know his name. He was in the frame last pre-season, wasn't he?
It's just lazy, ain't it? They're just looking back at last year.
An old scouting report, yeah.
Just looking back at, I mean, I know websites and that, I need to write about something in that, but at least be creative, That's just a lazy link.
Right.
That's I'm not entertaining him.
You're not entertaining him. I like that. Adil Bilbina, who is playing his football in Algeria. He's a left winger, 19. I don't want us linked with any left wingers until Jota signs.
Nah, again, I think this is just agent firing a name out there.
Yeah,
Can you see it?
I like it. Listen, you heard it here first. Ko Itakura, Man City, centre back, 25, also on our radar last year.
I've just called one lazy because we were linked with a centre half that we were already linked with, but this has probably got more weight to it because of the City group link and the fact that Postecoglou knows the player well, and it's maybe just a wee bit. It feels like a pair of slippers, this man, eh? It does. It just feels comfortable. Where the Ben Davis one was a Neil Lennon sort of. We'll try and sign him, but Japanese background. I can maybe see us going back in for him because we do need a left-footed centre half. I think that's a must for this summer. A must.
I'd agree with that. Christopher Scott, Bayern Munich, attacking midfielder, 19. He has played most of his games for the under-23s, or the B team rather, second string, but he has played for Bayern Munich's top side on a couple of occasions, Kev. He's been linked for a wee while, Christopher Scott. Do you see anything happening with that?
Seemingly was that a game towards the end of last season. Somebody's telling me Ikura's right-footed, so that just try and edit out that last couple of minutes, Paul, about a left-footed Japanese centre-half. Seemingly is right-footed. See, that shows you how much I know about these guys. Who we talking about? Christopher Scott.
Dear Scott.
Dear Scott. We need with Rogic leaving, could we be in the hunt for an attacking midfielder? Possibly, yes. He's coming from a decent team, a decent pedigree, 19-year-old. It's probably not a project signing, actually. At 19, he's probably going to go straight into the first team squad, and he would give Matt O'Reilly competition. I would be interested in that. I would be really interested to see if that would happen, especially for that fee. That fee's a bargain to get somebody from Bayern Munich.
$250,000? $250,000? Yeah. So at the moment, Kev's having Itakura and Scott, even though Itakura kicks the ball with his right foot. Julian Odd, I think his name is, of Lanús, Argentinian left back, 19. We are linked with a few left backs. It's just another name in the hat for me, Kev. What's your thoughts?
Again, did we ever sign people for South America? It's hard to get work permits, don't we?
Who was the last one? Who's the last
Raphael.
South American? Did we not have one after him? Who did we sign, remember? And he ended up at with Ronnie Dyler over in New York. What was his name? Remember? His squad number was 4. Juarez, that's the boy.
Efran Juarez.
That's the man, yep. All right.
Any links for South America always hang me with a bit of salt, as take with a punch of salt as well, because it's just
a bit of suspicion.
It's just that difficult to get work permits. Yeah, it's really, really difficult to get work permits, and
the transition as well has proven difficult for players coming to Scotland.
I lack salt and stuff like that.
Any excuse to bring them up. Connor Barron, Aberdeen, interesting one. Central midfielder, 19 years of age. The Aberdonians, or the Aberdeen fans within the state of Scottish football, are raving about this kid. And he's been linked. Celtic scouted him in the under-21 game, where apparently he was the best player on the park. You heard this one, Kev?
I haven't heard this one, but then is this the make weight for Liam Scales going up there?
Like that.
If that's as you say, Aberdeen are not going to give us the $500,000 or the $600,000 that we paid Shamrock Rovers for Liam Scales. So is this we'll give you Liam Scales if you give us this guy, and we'll maybe add a couple of grand on the top of it. But then again, what age is this boy? What age is he?
19.
19.
Yep.
Again, that you've got to say he's likely to get more games in Aberdeen unless he's a generational talent.
No, at this stage you're right. So then he falls into the category of project. What is a project? Someone you buy knowing that they're going to develop, but they're not going to be in your team for maybe 12 to 18 months. he seems to fall into that category. We've got enough players in that kind of central midfield area at the moment who are already struggling for game time, Kev, who are, in terms of their development, way ahead of this kid, but he's got loads of potential. So it'll be interesting to see if he is, and Scales is used as a make weight for that. Red Scotland comes in. Joe Hart is the best goalkeeper in Scotland, so we're good on that front. I am all for being faithful to players which have been faithful to us. Joe took a pay cut and helped us to the title.
I've got no. I do not disagree with that, Red, but there is an argument out there. There is an absolute argument out there that we need a goalkeeper who's better with the ball at his feet for Postecoglou's style to work against better opposition.
Yep.
I didn't buy into that. I do not buy into that because I think there's gaping holes elsewhere in the team rather than spending a hell of a lot of money on a goalkeeper.
Mm-hmm. Archduke 8199, Mexican lad, F1 Juarez, as Kevin said. And yeah, remember Juninho? That didn't quite work out either. Now, we can't have a bulletin
Azagiri as well. Azagiri.
Yeah, there you are. We can't have a bulletin, Kev, without mentioning Jota and Cameron Carter-Vickers. It's only a matter of time before the strapline is, have they signed yet? Jota, apparently there are no issues on the personal terms. A Celtic fan spotted him in New York. You can't go anywhere without a Celtic fan getting a selfie, remember? And interesting wee quote here from Cameron Carter-Vickers. I am 24 now and I want to be somewhere where I can settle for a few years. Will that place be Celtic Park? Kev, what are you thinking? How confident are you on these two guys? Nothing's happened yet.
I'm off the state of mind, Paul, that if it wasn't happening, we would know by now. If it wasn't happening, I think we would actually know by now. I think Ange Postecoglou knows what the guy's answer is, and I also think that the club will try and get the deals done. They will. I'm confident, and maybe that's just me just being madness, but I think we would know if they weren't coming by now because
there would be strong rumours that they're going to X, Y, and Z.
Yes, and the Scottish press would take great pleasure of letting us know that they're not coming as well.
Buy a paper. Who buys papers? Who buys papers, Johnny? Come on. Nobody buys papers. Yes, so loads to talk about as it is the pre-season. We're waiting on the fixtures coming up. We're still going to be going out every single day on the weekdays, and there's loads of other content on the channel. So get onto the YouTube channel, subscribe, it's free. Like this, give it a big thumbs up, because we lost 100 episodes of Acsom. On YouTube, that is. They still exist. They're out there on all the other platforms. But the YouTube videos, so the algorithm took a wee hit because that's what happens, Kev. And so we're just trying to build it up with the daily bulletins again. But as I was saying over the weekend there, on Friday, I was at wasn't it Reading? I've been to Reading. I was at Nottingham. And I was watching such acts as Jerry Cinnamon, Dylan John Thomas. There was a band from Liverpool called Rats. The lead singer could be described as a Scouse Tupac. Zuzu and many others. That'll all be on the channel as well. Had a lovely wee chat with Dylan John Thomas about music and football and all that kind of stuff. Jerry Cinnamon obviously was headlining. Kev, what's your take on the phenomenon, the cult-like status of Jerry? What's your take on it? I know you're a music fan. Some might say aficionado. What's your take? And others in the chat, come on, get involved. It's been an incredible, development for Jerry Cinnamon to do what he's done, sell out Hampden once, almost twice, on his own terms. No big record deal behind him. What's your take on it?
I'll probably go against the grain here. First things first, I actually thought you were saying you were doing in Nottingham watching Scott McKenna. I was about to go, oh no. Jerry Cinnamon, I do not get it. He's not my cup of tea. I do not get how he's became the phenomenon that he's actually become, but fair play to him. you have to take your hat off to him. To say a wee guy for Easterhouse has managed to do it like himself. Selling at Hampden twice is unbelievable. As I say, I just can't get him. I just can't take to it whatsoever. There's quite a few things like that. The Cortinas is another big band that I just can't. I've listened to them and go, I just do not get it. I'll maybe get it in a couple of years' time, but I do not get it just now. But fair play to him, really fair play to him. But if he was headlining a festival, I wouldn't be watching him. Sorry, Jerry, if you're watching.
They'll be watching. They definitely will be watching. Yeah, just a wee bit of chat over the weekend, and obviously we've still got some feedback coming in. And Angelo Tyro, Ko Itakura is right-footed. It can operate on the left. Kev, you need to read the papers, son. And Ryan Kelly brings up Connor Barron. Yeah, Connor Barron. I think people say read the papers, but what they mean is read the news, because we don't. But
there's so much absolute rubbish out there.
Oh, I know.
That folk are just filling up websites for clicks, man. So I just kind of switch off. And I mean, I've only got a wee brain. There's only a certain amount of stuff that I can put in my brain and try to retain. And what fit Japanese centre halves play with is like somehow that just doesn't sit in there.
You will not. It's in there now. You won't forget it now.
No, it's in there now, but it's something that I don't actively seek out.
Well, okay, well, you'll not make that same mistake again, because they've pounced on you. International Celts. I know you like your international football. My first kind of vague memory of international football was the 1986 World Cup, but I wasn't as invested in football as I was a couple of years later. So I always cite Euro 88 as being my international awakening when it comes to football, and supporting the Republic of Ireland at Euro 88. It was a great tournament, Kev. Scotland never qualified, of course. But you remember, Hulett's bullet, Van Basten's volley, Rinat Dzayev, the goalkeeper for Russia, who at that time was one of the highest rated goalies in the world. It was just a great tournament. And as time has progressed, a wee bit like the English football, I've got a bit less and less interested in international football. I've got to say that. So when we come along to international breaks, international games, double headers, etc., I'll focus on the Celtic angle. I'll look at where the Celts are playing. And obviously Scotland didn't get the result that many of us would have liked. Starfelt got injured for Sweden. Abada scored his first goal at full international level, ghosting in at the kind of back post, which we've seen him doing a few times for Celtic. And Juranovic was back for Croatia. As well. What was your biggest takeaway? I know you are an international football fan, Kev. You have gone in and watched Scotland on numerous occasions. But what was your biggest takeaway from the international week?
There's too much football, and why are they playing football at this time of year? And these games just seem like an utter waste of time. The Nations League games, I mean, they're no holding my interest whatsoever. Even the Scotland game, any excitement I had going into a World Cup playoff was completely gone by the time the game came round. And it was just one of those games that you just wanted out the road. Just go, right, let's see what happens because of the opposition and what's actually happening. I didn't think Scotland played well. The Ukrainians played us off the park, fully deserved to go through. I think Ukraine were a bit unlucky yesterday for the highlights that I actually saw as well. Pleased that Starfelt, it doesn't seem to be a hamstring injury. Seems to have been a back spasm, which will still see him out for a couple of weeks. See, I did pay attention to some things that I actually read. So I just think there's too much international football. As I says on Friday, Starfelt and Yotta have been in Ibiza for a week. Then Starfelt's away training with his international side. It just seems utterly bizarre to have. I mean, Scotland have got 3 games left. 1 game against Ireland as well. There's just a hell of a lot of games in this week. And I just didn't see the point of it. And this is why people switch off from international football. Now, for me, this Nations League is just a waste of time. Really, I will watch the games, but I won't have any sort of interest in them whatsoever.
No, it is interesting how your priorities change. You fall in love with football, Kevin, and you want to watch any kind of type and any level of football, but as you get older you start prioritising it, or I certainly have. I know that not everybody's like that. People watch every game that's available to them. I'm bringing this one up because it's coming in from Twitch. Thanks very much for getting involved on the Twitch channel. Great wee avatar and name as well. That's why I brought you up. And what we've also got, which I find really interesting, Kev, is that Brand Finance, which are a global brand valuation consultancy, have ranked Celtic in the top 50 clubs in the world. We came in at 44, I think it was, and I read a few reports about how amazing that was, that a Scottish club would be able to breach the top 50 of global football brands. I still don't think we're as big as we should be. I think there's a lot of things the club could do better in terms of global brand management and promotion. Kev, what's your take on that? Do you think that we could approach that in a different way? Do you think we could get into other regions better than we currently are?
I think we could do a lot of things better, but whether it would put us up the brand league table the way that the people who run Celtic want us up the brand league table, their priorities are different for me. You see me, I just want us to be a great version of St. Pauli. I think we could do a lot of things. I think we can do a lot of things different and actually keep that competitive, progressive nature that we actually believe that we are. I mean, I'm fed up saying that we just want to be a Man United and everything that Man United do, we try to copy. I do think that we've got a unique history, a unique identity, and we didn't make enough of it. We do not make enough of it. And
if you went down the kind of cult route of a St. Pauli, Kev, surely that would improve your brand in any case.
It would. It definitely would, but there just seems to... It means making decisions which might annoy people. I think putting back in to certain campaigns, certain issues which may not look good for certain money men sitting on our board. Doesn't sit with the politics of some board members. Shall I say, to go down that route, hook, line and sinker. I mean, there are certain things that they can do, but they won't do it because they're quite happy to take Adidas money and stuff like that. They could make their own kits. There's the whole range of things they can actually do, but they won't do it. I mean, to get your brand up that table, they've got to move leagues. And when you talk about a cult club, I reckon if we moved leagues, say we moved to the English Premier League or a European league, we would become a cult club by default. The board, when they need to actually change anything, we would become a cult club by default, and we would be everybody's second favourite side from a left-wing centre, left-wing persuasion or a diaspora persuasion. We would become it by default. We would become massive, bigger than what we are by default.
Mountain Man agrees with you, Kev. That was a good way to end the show. Kevin Graham and I have been talking Celtic over the last hour. If you enjoyed that, then subscribe to the channel. It's on YouTube. You can also like us and follow us on all the various social media platforms. Kevin Graham is going to be performing some poetry at a State of Mind's event in Dunfermline, which is going to be compared by the Magic Mod. So we do deal with magicians as well, Kev. As well as some bands, The Chase, Usual Affairs, Twinstown, they're all on the bill, along with the podcasting poet Kevin Graham. Thanks everybody for getting involved on the various platforms. All that's left for me to say is, Kevin Graham, thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers everybody.